Hello, honeydews, and welcome to Sippin N Bitchin, where the drinks are icy and the book talk is spicy. We're your main bitches. I'm Sam.
And I'm Steph. I've been up for a while, but I made Sam get up really early today.
Yeah, I had to get up early anyways. My daughter started summer school.
Yay, summer and
Woo.
school. Something like that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
she's excited.
Oh,
So
that's what's important. Episode 6, part 3, Light in the Flame. We're picking back up with chapter 21, and then we'll try to get through like chapter 31, maybe if we're lucky, and then we'll go into part 4, which will drop next day by the time you guys are listening to this. Um, I guess we could just dive right in as I sip my Alani and caffeinate my life.
I
So
only have water today, so my life is sad.
there's still the rest of the day after, so it'll be fine. Something like that. Okay. So chapter 21. Diving right into some heavy emotional like stuff.
This whole book.
Sarah's yeah, honestly, Sarah is like, what makes you think you're not good? And Niktos is like, I have done things, Sarah. And she's like, killing out of necessity or by force. And Nikto said nothing as his unflinching stare settled on me. And then she's like, or is it because you started to enjoy killing those who'd summon you out of a desire to harm another? None of that changes your inherently good, Niktos. Like, I love that she's fighting to show him how good he is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she says that I know because I'm sitting here alive when many, including everyone from your guards to gods and mortals alike, would have killed me when they learned of what I had planned. And yes, those embers are in me are important enough to keep me alive, but those embers don't mean you have to be kind. You could have thrown me in a dungeon.
I love
And
how he goes,
he,
that's still an option.
I mean, honestly, that is a great like shows that he has a heart without obviously having a heart. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah,
clearly like care. I think it shows the difference between caring and being, I don't know. I think he is good, whatever.
of
And
course.
Nick is just like, all you've proven is what I've told you before. That one decent and kind bone I have in me belongs to you.
Mm. Every time they say that, there's only one thing I think of.
That's also the same as me, which I guess says more about us than it does about them.
That's true.
Um, she counters and says, your handling of me isn't the only reason I know you're good. You didn't want to enjoy those killings and you stepped away before it could change you. I know because you feel the marks those deaths left behind and you carry them on your skin. I know because despite not having the ability to love, you are still kind and care deeply more than most.
I think that's a good point because I don't think someone who didn't care would put a mark for every life that has been lost at what they feel is their hands.
Could you imagine having a tattoo for every like tragedy or like regret or like negative event that
I
has
would be
impacted
covered.
you in your life?
I would be
Like
covered.
that's her, I mean, tattoos are permanent, yes, obviously, but like that's
Right.
like a permanent reminder. Like sometimes you have fleeting thoughts and you like remember a time, but like this that shit, you stare at yourself in the mirror and you're like, damn, that's a terrible time. I don't want to be that person ever again, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's you are good, Niktos. I don't know why you keep saying you're not.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
So it's a whole I'm good, I'm not good, yes you are, but you're not, kind of back and forth thing. Um and Sarah says, "You'll find out if your plan doesn't work, you'll get to see my soul upon death. It's not black, it's red, drenched in the blood of those I've killed, lives I've taken that haven't left behind the marks you speak of. I don't feel them, not like you do. Sure, I may experience some remorse, but it never lasts. I felt the same way as I did when I shoved that whip down Tavius's throat." Which honestly he deserved that, so like
Yes, he
whatever.
did.
All I felt for them was pity and annoyance. And my stepfather, it may not have been my hand that took his life, but it was my actions, and I have barely thought about it. To be honest, I think the only reason I felt anything is because of the embers of life. If they weren't there, I probably wouldn't have felt a thing. And I feel like this partially has to do with her literally being groomed to
Kill.
like well, kill, but also like be pliable and
Yeah.
like numbing herself. Like I don't think she's like present in
Yeah.
these moments. I think she kind of just, for lack of a better term, like out of body experience, kind of
She wasn't
like,
taught to have remorse or to feel those things. Like she was taught to seduce and kill and be what you
yeah.
needed to be in the moment.
It's all about survival, though, to be honest with you. Um, and so they're, they're still going back and forth about him being good, her being good, blah 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 blah
It's
blah.
now a fight of I'm not trying
Who's
to tell
worse?
you you're good. It's like, no, I know you're good because I'm bad. No, you're not bad. Yes, I'm yeah. It's a whole thing now.
And then she goes, or he goes, there's no such thing as a good primal. And she's all like, what? And Nyctos is like, the essence that courses through our veins is what made the realms, creating the air that is breathed, the land that is sowed, and the rain that falls from the skies to fill the oceans. It's powerful and ancient, unbiased, it's absolute. And in the beginning, when there were just the ancient primals, the fates, and the dragons, we love dragons, primals were neither good nor bad, they just were, purely impartial, a perfect balance because they felt nothing, neither love nor hate. And then mortals were the first to feel from the moment they took the first breath. And that was just a natural occurrence with them. But primals were meant to be beyond such mortal needs and wants, which, okay, valid. I see your point there. But I think this is a really good um, illustration of evolution. Like how, what is it, Darwinism? How, like, as time goes on, the species inherits the thing that helps them survive the longest kind of thing.
Yeah.
Listen, I haven't taken school. I haven't done school in a
Nature
very long
versus
time.
nurture kind of
Yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they talk about how emotions can sway one's decisions, no matter how biased anyone believes they are. If they can feel, then they can be coerced by emotions. And then giving history on how a primal fell in love and it troubled the fates. And that's the whole birthing of love being a weakness. And then the array, we learned that the array created the first primal, and that the array also started to feel emotions. Um, the and this is pretty much just an outline of how they came to be where they are now, essentially fucked and essentially full of emotions, positive and negative.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Damn emotions, they ruin everything. Just kidding.
then, well, Nyctos then makes this distinction of how the way she feels is because of the embers in her, but she is still mortal, and the mortal part of her is good. And it's hard for me to visualize how, like, when you're one being, how part of you, well, I guess that's how a brain works, but like part of you can be one way, but then the other part of you could be another way. Like, I don't, that distinction
I
between the
mean,
two confuses me a little bit.
the girl does have two souls, so there's a
That's
lot more
true.
complicated things going on in
That
her.
actually makes more sense than the whole she's mortal,
Yeah.
like the Embers versus the Mortal. I think the Satoria versus the Sarah makes more sense
Yeah.
in my brain. But like, that's neither here
I feel like
nor there.
Satoria would be more hardened to the world and
Yeah,
less like forgiving because of what she's gone through versus
correct.
Sarah. So
So then Nyctos is saying you wouldn't feel the sourness of shame if it wasn't, or the bitterness of agony when you spoke of killing. You wouldn't even care if you were deserving. You would only take. You wouldn't be brave. And Sarah doesn't know how to respond. She's like, could there be truth in what he said? She's like, I do feel shame and agony and confusion. And she's like, she just tells Nyctos, you're good by moral standards because, well, mortal with a T, mortal with a T, because killing is not moral. So, like,
well,
mortal.
depends on your morals, I guess. But us here at Sippin N Bitchin don't condone murder, so don't take that the
That's
wrong
also
way.
true. And essentially, like, trying to be good is all that matters. Trying or whatever. That's the moral of this whole story, is like, as long as they can recognize their actions and their emotions and kind of whatever, as long as they try to be good, that's all they can hope for. Um, I don't know if this is my note or your note, but I'm just gonna go with it. So now Nyctos is like, are you gonna join me in my chambers? And I guess she is wearing less clothing than last time, which I don't know how that's even possible. And
She's only wearing underwear.
and then so then he's asking if the pleasure for pleasure's sake offer still stands, and obviously it does because well, you know. And then he comes in with the 36 freckles, and you know, he explores for more, and she makes this like mental note or whatever you want to call it. This wasn't a desire fueled by the need for blood, feeding, or anger. This was pleasure for the sake of pleasure, and it was a first for us. And I think that that's a really important thing to note, because I feel like every time they're in these heated moments, it's like feeding, or it's like emotions
They've been
are
arguing.
heightened or whatever. And this is literally just like a, hey, we had this discourse, we came to this quote unquote conclusion, and now we're moving on. And then after their exploration time, Nyctos, the chapter ends. I love that the chapter ends on this. He whispered against her lips in a harsh, raw voice as he shuddered, his hips churning against mine, the one word that caused the pleasure to roll on endlessly. Liesa.
Damn right.
I ain't got that tattooed on me for nothing, y'all. It has nothing to do with sex. But the meaning behind the word is quality.
No, she really got it, because that's what gets her off. She looks at her tattoo at the word liaison, man, that's it for her. Don't
I'm not here to kink shame. I'm not here to kink shame whoever, kink that is. Okay, so then we're going to chapter 22. Nyctos is gone after, they have their moments. He had a bath drawn for her and breakfast ready when she was done. He ate with her. Yeah. Oh, he returned before she got out of bed, had a bath drawn, and he had breakfast with her. Why did my brain not register words?
I would say it's early, but it's early for me. So
it's not early for me. So then she's getting ready and he's getting ready, and she was happy that she had clothing for herself. The clothing lining the wardrobe now belonged only to me, and that was a strangely empowering feeling that stayed with me as Nyctos and I left the palace to enter the mortal realm. So now they're going to what? Where are they going? To go see Ezra, right? Yeah. They're going to go see Ezra to warn her about what they found out in their convoluted way.
Yeah.
And by convoluted, I mean like Cliff Notes version. A very Cliff Notes version that's not very revealing. I really want to read this part. My lips parted as the mist eased off, revealing the lake's shadow stone floor and the still waters on either side of us. Seeing the lake split in two as if held back by invisible walls was an unsettling sight and an impressive one. And let me tell you, all I thought, beautiful imagery, but the only thing I thought when I read this? Bruce Almighty with the tomato soup.
We went okay, so we went totally different directions, because my note in the book said, "Okay, Moses."
Well, that's also valid, but also Bruce Almighty. And then they're getting on Odin, and why is Odin mad here? Because Odin will draw attention because he's large and very beautiful, and like he ain't impressed with her still.
Yeah, he's still upset because she put a knife to his throat.
Yeah, well, and Nyctos is like, he appreciates the compliments, and she's like doubtful, and Nyctos is like, he's just being dramatic, and honestly,
that's why we're all Odin.
Yeah, we are all Odin. The gates to Wayfarer. So they get to Wayfarer and the gates are open, and Sarah is very shocked. She's like, there are people everywhere, not nobles, but like the people of Lysania. They milled about the wall, their faces glistening with a sheen of sweat, as some carried baskets and others armfuls of sacks. And Nyctos is like, I'm guessing that's not normal. And she's like, no. It's very, to me, it's very, I know I'm drawing too many parallels to like things that like in my life, but it reminds me
Okay.
of Frozen, like when Elsa like gets her powers, but like she shuts down everything because she's too scared of like hurting people.
Yeah.
So then, like by the end, spoiler, if you haven't seen Frozen by
By
now, I don't know
now.
what to tell you, but spoiler, but like by the end of it, like it's a bustling like kingdom
Yeah.
now, and like people are doing all these things.
Well, it
That's
also
what I
draws
thought.
parallel to the main series from Blood and Ash of like how
Oh, that's
the
a direct correlation. That's probably
the nobles and stuff they have their inner rises, so people can't come to the gates. Whereas like in Atlantia, people can walk right up to the palace if they want. They can get close if they want. Like it just shows that the difference of life of how she grew up being shut out and the world was shut out, and now that Ezra is
it's like a
queen, it's more
whole new world.
open. Yeah.
Yeah.
A whole
Um,
new world.
I knew you were gonna do that. Um, and
Like you
so
didn't.
they're listen, I already did one Disney reference. I don't think I need to do more.
um,
Anyway. Um, so then Nyctos is saying that they feel him. Um, like they don't know exactly what they feel, but they know something is among them, and um, they felt death. And Sarah asks, "Does it bother you, their reaction?" And Nyctos goes, "What they feel is natural. It does not bother me." And she's like, "Honestly?" And he's like, "Honestly. What they're feeling is instinct, and that instinct is telling them not to loiter near me, and they shouldn't." And he's like, "How can I be bothered by their sense of self-preservation?" I mean,
that's a
mood.
big difference between him and Colas though, because Colas
Fear
did
me.
hate. Yeah, he hated that everyone embraced his brother and no
He
one
resented
embraced
his
him.
role.
Yeah, and this just shows that it's not being the primal of death isn't a negative. It's just your how you go about it and your perspective of it.
Yeah, I think this is a very big like change in perspective and like trying to figure out exactly how. I think Colas takes it way too personal, so that's just my hot take on it.
That's kind of obvious.
Well, true.
He takes a lot
Anyway,
of things personal.
that's accurate. So then they are entering the well, they're entering into the hall, the castle, the Great Hall. That's what it is. That's what it was called. Two diamond and citrine thrones sat on the raised dais at the end of the hall. Neither was draped in white or scattered with black roses to mourn their lost king. Um, Fuck Tavius, but his father is okay, I guess. I mean, his father and her had a weird relationship, but it wasn't like a huge negative one. It was just there. Ezra sat in a much less elaborate chair at the foot of the die, her light brown hair swept up in a neat bun. There was no crown upon her head as she listened to a man across the table from her speak, one who leaned over a stack of parchment. The man's clothing and posture screamed noble, and the angry flush to his olive skin warned that he was unhappy. Guards stood behind Ezra, two to her left and two to her right. They were dressed as those on the wall were, tunics, breeches, and armor. Um, Hear me out. These women don't like crowns on their head.
No, they
They
don't.
they literally are just like, I
They're
don't,
more
this
of like, I
heavy.
know what I am. I don't need to show what I
Show
know.
it. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not very flashy and
Men are
like
like flashy, look at me, I'm in power. Women are like, I know I got the power. I don't need a flashy crown to show it. Like,
so essentially she's hosting this town hall and then Ezra uh Ezra finally sees sorry. So Ezra finally hears Sarah's name because one of the guards is going for her or whatever. And she goes rigid for a heartbeat and then shoots to her feet, pressing a hand to her slender waist. The noble across from her hastily followed as she searched the floor. I waited, knowing Ezra would remember that I'd favored the alcove the few times I was in the Great Hall. When she spotted us, she stilled once more, likely in disbelief. But Ezra was not one prone to panic. She was logical and calm in all things, and she was then as well.
hmm, must be nice.
And Ezra's like, Seraphina. And Sarah's like, Ezra. And and Sarah goes, or should I say Queen Esmiria? And Ezra was like, don't you dare do that in terms, because she's just trying to bow. I'm just Ezra to you.
Love that.
Um, And Ezra's shocked because she didn't think she'd see Sarah again, and she's like, "Why? Because I was supposed to kill this one?" And Niktos was like, "Nice," very dryly. And Ezra goes, blood drained rapidly from Ezra's face, and I wasn't sure if it was because of what I said or because Niktos had lowered his hood.
That's one
Honestly,
way
could
to
be both.
like rip off the band-aid of like, why are you here? I didn't think I'd see you. And she's just like, why? Because I'm supposed to be dead because of this doofus behind me.
Listen, I just
Hmm.
I just work here. Um, so then they're talking back and forth, and Ezra's like, just so you know, I was never a fan of the deal. And Niktos is like, because it wouldn't be wise to attempt to kill a primal, and Ezra's like, yes, but mainly because it was unfair to Sarah. And Sarah's internal dialogue is like, this wasn't news to me, but it was still good to hear that. And Niktos said nothing, but he eyed Ezra a tad less intensely than before, which I think is like a show that he like respects her because
Yeah.
up until this point, he just had what Sarah would say about Ezra, kind of
Hmm.
her POV of it.
And he knew her mother and her Ezra's brother, so he had every right to be very suspicious until like
Correct.
proven otherwise.
And then Sarah tells Ezra about the rot and how, just she's asking questions, and Niktos is just like, you believe her that easily after she goes through the whole explanation. And Ezra's like, I believe her. Um, and he's like, because I'm here. And she says, well, your presence may have a little to do with it. And he's like, a little. And she said, just a bit, but I know how important saving Lysania was for Sarah. She would not lie about something knowing what it meant for her kingdom.
Mm.
And Sarah's like, Lysania was never mine. And Ezra's like, that's not true. You should have been queen, Sarah, not me. If I can acknowledge that, you should be able to as well.
Mic drop.
But honestly, Ezra's doing great as the queen, so
Mm-hmm. We
slay.
love her.
Um Ezra is so funny. She's like, uh anyway, they're talking about the rot, and Sarah's asking, has it spread? And Ezra was like, a little bit more. We've lost a few more farms, but it hasn't sped up or anything like that. It is good to know this, what you've shared. It gives me, well, I don't know what else to say, but it gives me hope. And Sarah's like, you didn't think I'd succeed at killing him? And Ezra's like, I wasn't quite sure you'd succeed at the whole making him fall in love part. And Sarah's like, wow. And Ezra's like, you are a bit temperamental, and those around you do have a tendency to end up stabbed. I figured you'd probably get yourself killed by growing impatient and just stabbing him. And Nictus is like, now that was incredibly astute. And then Ezra's like, you are death, but you're not very dead-like. And he's like, how is one death-like? And Sarah's like, we can't stay anymore. We
We
gotta
gotta
go.
go.
And the Ezra shares this really sweet, I think this is so sweet, but Ezra's like, remember what you said about those lands tainted by the rot, and why couldn't they be used to build homes in the Crofts Cross, living in the most cramped conditions? And Ezra goes, that's where Mari, her wife, and her father are, at the ruined lands. They're going to build homes. Nothing extravagant, but I discovered stores of lumber, at least enough to start with. It was your idea. I thought you should know. And I thought that that was
Love that.
so beautiful to their
Yeah.
relationship. And then they're leaving, and well, they come face to face to bitch ass cunt mother. And well, you look well, she says. Fuck off. The mother can fuck off. She
Yeah.
looks well, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so they have this really awkward discourse, and Sarah comes to this realization where she didn't really need to see her, hear her, or look upon her again, and she was really relieved by this. She just was like, I came to talk to Ezra. I have. Now I must leave. Excuse me. And then her mom was like, I didn't know what Tavius was planning, and Nick just was like, that does not matter. And he goes, you had to know that your stepson was capable of harming your daughter, and yet you did nothing to prevent it. His death was not the only one owed that day. The fact that you still breathe is due to a grace you do not deserve. And she tries to thank him, and he goes, "Do not thank me. It was not I who saved your life. I wanted to take it, to put you where you belong. Beside that bastard of a mortal you would have crowned king. It was your daughter. For reasons unbeknownst to me, she told me no. That is who you should spend the rest of your undeserving life thanking." And honestly, that's so funny. I was about to say pop off. I looked at the note and it said pop off.
Listen, you rub off on me sometimes.
Yeah, I try. But yeah, so I think this is a really great, like, Niktos doesn't have to defend her, does not have to like engage, does not have to be anything really to Sarah, but like I like his sense of like, because I feel like this is partially like a protection thing. So
Yeah. No, I
that's just
agree.
me.
I agree with that. They come back to the Shadowlands and she spends hours training and then hours training Nyktos in the ways of the bedroom. It's really a great life she's living. Let me just say that.
Mhm.
She's enjoying her time with him. They're kind of talking about the trip today. She's like, I know you think it was probably unnecessary. And he's like, I don't think that at all. Um, he's like, he basically understood that he needed to see her. He understood that that's the one person in her life that like ever gave her anything other than Holland, that ever gave her any positivity in the mortal realm. Um, and so he understood that no, you need to see her, you need to know she was okay, kind of thing. Um, and he asked her um if she was upset with what he said to her because she said she was thinking about her mother. And she said, good gods, no. I wish I could relive that moment over and over. Her just staring at you open mouthed as we walked away.
I mean,
And yeah, I would want that too.
same.
But really what she's thinking about is, well, before that, he says, like, I should have, like, let you deal with her. Which is understandable of being like, it's your mother, I didn't have a place to step in, but she's like, nah, I'm fine with that. I realized I didn't want anything to do with her. I don't need her in my life anymore, so I just
Mood.
don't care. But then she says that what she's feeling is that she feels like a part of her is like her mother, and she doesn't like that. And Niktos, our lovely Niktos, says, I think all of us have parts of us that are like our parents, but that doesn't mean we are them. And
Retweet, say for the
I
people in the
think that's,
back.
yeah, I was like, that's very important to remember because a lot of people have trauma related to their parents, and it's just important to remember that just because they're one way doesn't mean that us having certain likes to them means that we are them.
Mm-hmm.
And he even goes to say, like, just because someone shares the same bloodline as you doesn't mean they deserve your time or thoughts. And she's like, you're right, you would understand that. And then he's like, I don't want us to think about this anymore. And so they go back to doing what they're doing to not think about it.
I don't blame them.
Right? And it says he rolled his large body onto mine, and within seconds, I wasn't thinking about anything but him and the way he kissed and how he used his mouth and tongue and other stuff. He chased away those other thoughts, even the dread that clung like a shadow and haunted like a ghost. And I I want I want a Nyctos. Um anyway, she wakes up the next morning and is with Hector going to Nyctos's office. Um and she wants to talk to Nyctos about training. But Hector is very nervous because she's smiling. He says, you're smiling. I feel like I should be worried when you're smiling. And she's like, there's nothing to be worried about. Little does Hector know,
Uh-huh.
it's like the post-sex smile, man.
It's the post-sex glow.
Mm-hmm. She's thinking about how he calls her Liesa, which honestly I would think about that all day too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she sees him, and when their eyes connect, she sees Nyctos, their eyes connect, and she says, were hot flashes a symptom of the calling? I'd ask Eos next time I saw her. Definitely not Nyctos.
You never necked us. Never
Never
necked us,
Nyctos.
dude.
Oh gosh. Imagine her trying to say that to him.
Mm-hmm.
But they go in and they're talking about how things were going, and he's like, "Oh, it's easy to get work done when I don't have your breasts in my face, basically distracting me." Which sad life to live.
I don't see the problem, but like,
Right?
whatever.
I mean, obviously that's a him problem because she says, "Well, you should be pleased that there are no threats on my breast being such a distraction today," and he says they're always a distraction.
That's a you problem, Niktos, honey.
That is a unique toast. That
Mm-hmm.
is. But he has plans to take her places today. Um, so she was gonna go talk to him about training, and he was like, "Nah, I want to show you something."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're talking about this is something that I find funny. He's talking about his will and your mind being different. Like he's like, your mind takes time, your will is immediate, and I still can't wrap my head around that. I'm like, I feel like thinking it is immediate too. Like I get the concept what they're saying is you feel it and it happens kind of thing. Like sometimes
It's
it's just
like
ugh,
it's like muscle memory, but like not. It's like you know how to do something. Sometimes you know how to do something before you can think of how to do something. Like this
yeah,
is a terrible example, but like riding a bike, once you know how to ride a bike, it's kind of second nature. Like I don't think, hey, I have to pedal or hey, I have to brake. It's kind of just something you do organically over time,
yeah, yeah.
which I think is
Like
what we're
muscle
getting at
memory.
here. But like that's all I got for you, honestly.
Yeah. Like it's funny because like I get it, but my
But
mind
you don't
doesn't
get
get
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it, but you don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Anyways, they're going down these stairs and they end up in some cellars and she's like, "Should I be worried?" And he's like, "I hope that's not a serious question."
I
Putting you
mean,
in a cell now after everything, and especially after striking what is likely an ill-advised but very enjoyable deal with you, wouldn't make very much sense, would it?
well, that's very true. At
She's
least
like
she's just
ill-advised,
smart.
right? She's like ill-advised, and he said, "I also said very enjoyable."
Listen here.
But they're going down and she's starting to realize that part of why she believes that part of why he had his cardia removed was not to protect himself but protect others. He's protecting others from what his love could cause them. And honestly, that's a mood. I don't think we're always I think a lot of the times like some people are like, "Oh, love's gonna hurt me." But some of the times they're so self-conscious of themselves and like how they act that they're like, "I don't want my love to hurt them and the things I do to hurt them."
That's very self-aware.
Yeah, very, very self-aware. Um, they're talking about the bones and how the hold of primal once weakened. The only thing they have no effect on is a being of two worlds, aka the Draken, and well, that'd be the wolves once they um enter the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they start talking about the Draken, and he says the Draken are like the array, the dragons they come from are of ancient creation. What my father created after the Draken are gods, and if they were ever others given dual life, they too would be godlike. Kieran, our little Kieran is godlike in our
I
little
love him
Delano.
so much. Oh, Delano.
I know, I know. She asks what else has been given dual life, and he tells her about those that can shift into large felines.
Mm.
They're called
Spoiler.
they're called wyvern, which is so funny because we hear wyvern in like
Yeah.
our other books and we're like dragons. And no, these are large feline
Let
cats.
me tell you how confused I was. I was
Yeah.
like, huh? And then I tried to like maybe they're similar. Like, because sometimes books just copy the same
Yeah.
like concept. It was not the same, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess
That's
I'm
what I
gonna have to
thought
figure that
too,
one out.
because we have like the wyvern in Throne of Glass, and then we have them in Fourth Wing. And so I was like, it's okay, it's fine. It's gonna be the same thing, just spelled differently. Nope, they're cats. It's
Yeah, completely
not where
different.
I thought it was going at all.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you for keeping us on our toes.
Mm-hmm.
They're fierce fighters in both forms, and most gods know better than to be cornered by a pissed off wyvern. And then there are the Sirin. They're usually found in the Triton Isles. And she's like, do they live in water? And she said they can, and she's heard stories of them. Um and she's like, so those are the only things that can shift forms. And he gives her a grin and says, some primals and even a fewer gods. Part of me wonders why he never told her he could shift forms. Like, I don't know, maybe because he knew he watched her as the wolf. I don't know. Part of me is like, why did he never
I don't know.
mention? Interesting.
Maybe it's all part of his secret plan. Or maybe he tells her in the next book that we're going to read eventually. I'm just saying.
Your face. But yeah, so some gods can, and then they step into his little space. Um, it's a wide chamber which appeared to have been carved out of shadow stone. The walls not nearly as smooth as they were on the floors above me. Some sort of stone table had been built from the wall, standing a little bit higher than my waist. But what rested in the middle of the chamber caught and held my attention as I slowly walked forward. It was a large body of water, like a lake, but not. And he tells her it's a pool. It's like a very large bathtub. The end here is pretty shallow, but it gradually becomes deeper. Small mills at the end where it is even above my head, keeping the water moving, and the minerals that run off the shadow stone help to keep the water clean and cool. The kitchens are above us, and the fires there help keep this chamber heated. It's the closest thing I could get to a lake.
Oh, he's still thinking about her lake.
Yeah. And she asked if she created it with ether, and he said no, that would be kind of destabilizing and could bring down the whole place. It was all done by hand. He didn't do it alone. Rain and Ector helped. Even Sion and Rahar pitched in. So did Nectis. Belle mostly just stood by and supervised. I love Belle.
Me too.
And she ends up asking, why did you visit my lake if you had this? And he was quiet and then looked at her. Oh no, she looked at him and he was still staring at the pool, and he said, because it was your lake.
Oh,
I love that.
I love them so much.
Yeah. And then in chapter 24, they start talking about um Lathan and Ector, how they were following her. Um she was saying how she thought he was surprised when he saw her there, and he was, but that's just because I didn't know you were there, but I still knew it was your lake. He said, I had Lathan and Ector watching over you after your 17th birthday and as you grew older, but I checked in on you before that. I was curious about you, which, to be fair, if I knew I had a consort out there, I'd be kind of curious too. I'd be like, I want to know what I can about them. Um, he'd seen her go through the woods, saw her sit by the lake, but never lingered long enough to see more than her putting her feet in the water. Um, she's like, I had no idea. I really need to be more observant.
No shit, Sarah. No shit.
Right? She's like, why didn't you talk to me? He said, because even though I may be the youngest primal, younger than even most gods, you were a child, and I was a fully grown man by mortal standards. You have to know that you would have likely been disturbed by a random male approaching you in the woods. Fair.
That's very astute of you, Nyctos.
I mean, man
Good
or bear,
job.
Sarah, man or bear. Um, yeah. And she was like, if I were you, I would have been curious too, except I probably would have been creepy and spoken to you. Um he's being sweet, and he's talking about how he brought her down here also to kind of train. He wants to see if he can like coax like the ether out of her, get the embers riled up. Um and he tells her, if you behave yourself, then maybe you can go for a swim. And now he's getting into a mode of trying to like he knows that she's very motivated by emotion, and so he's like picking at her, like tapping her with all the annoying shit that he can, trying to rile her up. And we love that. And oh, I love this part. And he asks for her dagger, and she's like, "Why?" Or no, she's like, "How do you know I have it?" He says, "You always have it, Sarah. Hand it over, please." And the please is what gets her, man. That's her dangerous word. He says please, and
That's
she'd do
in both
anything.
books, in both
Yeah,
series.
yeah.
Please is the death of all of them.
That shows how manners weren't taught into them. That please is such a rare thing that they're like, "Oh, I have to do it now." But she hands him his dagger, and what does he do? He throws it at the wall high above where she cannot get it. And she says, "What the hell? Now you're just annoying me." And he says, "Right now, the essence is tied to extreme emotions. It'll be different once you ascend, but before then, it can manifest when you're very angry or frustrated. Extreme grief, pain. I have a feeling if I best you in fighting, you'll get pretty frustrated." And he said he threw the dagger at the wall because I don't want to get stabbed again, nor do I want you cutting off more of my hair.
True.
And she calls him a know-it-all, and she she said, "I lifted my right hand and extended my middle finger, even as adrenaline surged through me. He was probably right, but I missed training, fighting. In case you don't know what this means, go fuck yourself." And he says, "If you behave, maybe I'll fuck you instead." I
Well,
love that part so much.
of course you do.
Oh, of course I do. I mean, listen, that's a strong emotion. That's another way to get riled up. Like, come on now.
I don't think that that's how that works, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Anyways, they start fighting, and he's not playing fair. He's shadow stepping out of the way every time she comes to him. And she says, "One day I'm going to shadow step my fist into your face." Um, and finally, she's playing her own tricks, playing the whole like, "Oh, I'm getting tired," and he's like, "Oh, maybe it's the calling," and that's when she strikes, and he says, "Pure trickery," and they go back into fighting some more. Um, yeah. I said these two aren't really fighting, are they? They're kind of really they're playing with each other more than they're really fighting, because he captures her at one point, and he's like, "How are you gonna get out of this?" And she starts talking about his manhood, his very nice manhood, and it distracts him, and she ends up bringing her foot down onto his, and she's like, "That's how we'll get free." And he's like, "Is that your grand battle plan when you have no access to weapons? Speak of cocks." And she says, "If it works, why not?"
Honestly, though,
Right? And then he captures her again, and he says, "I don't think you're seriously trying to evade me."
I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either. And
Fine.
I need to I was gonna go away. Okay. She says, "Though being caught this way isn't all that bad. Do all primals fight this way?" It's really turned against him. Like, he was trying to rile her up, and she's ended up riling him up. And he ends up pressing her down on that table and really capturing her in a great position. Um, and he asks her, "If you like this, being dominated," and she's like, "I just like submitting to you." And he's like, "You never submit to me." She's like, "I'm submitting to you now." And that's really where it's going down now. And he said, "Did he understand that that I needed control in my life, in the decisions I made, no matter how big or small, that I wouldn't be dominated in conversation, nor would I submit to authority or in battle. But with him, with this, I could let go and be taken if I wanted, because I knew I was safe with him, because I trusted him."
Rex.
And I think that's a big important thing. Like, sometimes when you have no control, or you need all the control, you need a space to not have control and to feel safe.
What's that like?
Mm. Well, it's honestly, I kind of like had the same conversation almost with my husband the other night. I was like, "Look, by the end of the day, I don't want to make a fucking decision. I've been making decisions all day for the kids, for myself, for everything. that I don't want to decide another thing. So it's nice to have someone just decide all that for me. So it's a good plan. Um and she felt safe with him, so she was able to say things like harder, take me, fuck me, and he did. He took me harder, faster, fucked me. Like, what a nice thing. It says Nyctos's body continued to shudder as he slowed down behind me, the pressure of his fangs against my unbroken skin lessening as he whispered, "You are always safe with me, Liesa."
We love.
We love them.
We do love them. And then we go into chapter 25. Uh where it literally starts off first line. I must have been really well behaved because sometime later we made it to the pool. But we're still in the same spot. New
Yeah,
chapter, same
yeah.
spot. So then they're swimming and
Swim, swim, swim.
and it comes to a point where like she's under the water and it's like been 2.5 minutes, some ridiculous amount of time that she's
Yeah.
underwater, like holding her breath. And Niktos is like, like, why do you do that? Or, how do you do that kind of thing? And she said, maybe I started doing it because instead of feeling like I couldn't breathe, I was actually controlling it and it wasn't controlling me. I don't know, but it made me feel in control, not weak or something. Then again, I'm not sure that makes sense. It's just a weird habit of mine. And like, that's tracks, I
I'm not
guess.
gonna lie, this has made me want to see if I can practice like holding my breath underwater to see how long I can do it over time.
I There are ways you could train, like for divers and stuff. There's ways to
Yeah.
train your lungs or however that shit works. But I'm too scared that I wouldn't succeed, or I'd like
Yeah,
have a
that's
panic
fair.
attack. Like I'd be like doing it, and then like I think too hard, and then my brain would be like,
That's
ah.
that's very valid because a big fear of mine is drowning.
See,
So,
I'm just
but
saying.
maybe that would help get past it. I
Maybe
don't know.
I don't know. You try it. You let me know how that goes.
Okay.
So then Nikto starts talking about Lathan, and how he was when he was younger, and talking about how he had constant anxiety attacks, and Nectus teaching him breathing techniques.
Yeah.
Um, we do love Nectus. And it's he notes that it's like similar to what Sarah does to kind of calm
Hmm.
her down. Um, and she asked, did he know what caused the attacks? And Nyctos is like, Lathan was never sure, but Nectus said he thought it was anxiety, that even if Lathan weren't thinking about anything when he was falling asleep, it was the things he thought about during the waking hours catching up to him when his mind was quiet. And I really like that she kind of sprinkles in mental health, like in a relatable but like
Yeah.
clearly fantasy way, but like
Yeah.
ties it into the overarching story. Um, And Niktos tells Sarah that you're strong. Lathan was just as recklessly brave as you are. None of that has to do with the mind. And either
Oh,
way, you're not weak, Sarah, not physically, but more importantly, not mentally. You are one of the strongest people I've ever met, mortal or not, with or without the embers.
oh, I love her.
Um, and I think that she has this moment that she says, I knew I was likely projecting whatever messy feelings popped up, but he said I was strong, not the embers, me, and that mattered because it reminded me that I mattered. Because at the end of the day, like she has these embers of life in her, and she's very much not valuing her life enough. Like she thinks that it's all about the embers, getting the embers out. Like it doesn't matter what happens to her, despite what Nikto says. And I think this is a great, like, reassuring moment where it's like, no, you do matter, Sarah. Like, fuck the embers,
Yeah.
in a matter of speaking. Um, and I love that for them.
I
Love
agree.
that for her. Um, and then you know, he what did he do? He splashed her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he
Well, she
splashed her.
splashed him first.
Yeah, they're all splashing. Splish splash, they were taking a bath. And
Very, very.
she he uh he like draws funnel water into multiple funnels. and whips the water into a frothing frenzy. And Sarah has an internal thing that says, I was equally awed, amused, and completely enthralled by Nyctos as he eventually joined me in the center of the pool, keeping one arm securely around my waist as the water whipped back and forth around us. Not because he could create such things from water, but because he a primal of death played. And I think this show like humanizes him just a
Yeah.
smidgen. And she says like, and I couldn't help but think this felt like more, that we felt like more. And it's like the progression of their relationship, that despite him hurting her and all this shit that goes down between them, like when they have their moments, like it's them.
Yeah.
Um and then they get back to the they go back and they spend the rest of the day with uh the young Draken and Eos. The hours spent trying to keep Jadis from attempting to fly or set something on fire every other minute would have sufficiently exhausted me, as if she wasn't exhausted already.
Mood.
Um, then she goes to pick up Jadis, but in a sparkling silver shimmer, she shifted into her mortal form right then and there, naked as the day she was born, which caused Reaver to squawk and dart from the chamber faster than I'd ever seen him fly. Um, and Eos goes, none of the Drakens sleep in their mortal form unless they feel safe, especially as younglings, so it just means she feels comfortable with you. And like, I love that because we love a Jadis moment, and I don't know what happens to Jadis in the future, but like, I really hope that everything is okay, because if not, then I'm gonna be really sad.
I agree. I have the sun on my face now.
Well, then close the blinds.
They are. I'm trying to figure out where they're coming through.
Oh, well, maybe it's just the gods sending you a message. It's Eos or something.
It makes my
Um,
teeth look white.
anyway, uh, and then wait, is this him? Is this Reaver?
The coming in, the blonde
Yeah.
hair.
Yeah. Reaver comes in with his blonde hair and angular features. And he says that she'll want her blanket. He said in the oddly serious voice of his, a tone that seemed far too mature for a child who looked no older than 10 years old. And Ios is like, that is very thoughtful of you. And he just shrugs. Honestly, I cannot wait for them to be reunited because I feel like they're going to have such a great little relationship and it'll be so cute. Oh my God, what if they're like heartmates or something? Well, I guess he's too old for her. Whatever. In
No,
the
he's
scheme
not
of
too old for
things,
her.
probably not. But like, anyway.
I think he'd be cute.
Um, and so then, Sarah asks where Nectus went, and Reaver says, I think he went to Vadi. We're
Vathi?
gonna go, sure, whatever.
Vathi?
Vathi. We're gonna go with that to visit Aurelia. And Aurelia is a name that we see in the From Blood and Ash series. And she's a Draken in AT's court. Um, she's pretty nice. And Reaver says, I think Neck is sweet on her.
Love how he
Okay,
calls him Neck.
first, I was gonna say, first of all, Neck, what the heck, Reaver? Two, she's like, why do you think that? And Reaver's like, he always smiles whenever her name is mentioned. And Ios goes, that doesn't mean he's sweet on her. And Reaver's like, then why does Belle smile when someone says your name? And Ios's face flushes about a dozen shades of pink, thinking of how I'd seen the two of them interact with each other. I had thought there might be something between them. And Ios is just like, that's because Belle is silly. That is the most like not great retort you could
It's
have
like
had.
subtle, very subtle.
Um, and so then and then Sarah's like thinking of Nyctos and just thinking of him as Ash and there all the possibilities. Ash felt like more and there could never be more with Nyctos, which I, whatever. She's being a
Ugh.
girl, honestly. Um And then she comes to this realization of why she didn't make another attempt to escape. She didn't want to do what she'd have to do to weaken Collis. Instead, she wanted a future of her own, one where she could try to keep that part of her good, just like Nyctos did. A future that had moments like the ones that she'd spent with him earlier, moments of peace. Wanted years like his friend Lathan had, where he didn't struggle to find his breath when things became overwhelming. Maybe even moments like this where I held a sleeping child in my arms, one that was mine. Oh, she wants a kid. It's so cute. And then she realizes that she wants a future, period.
Listen, I've been taking note of like how she feels at different things because I'm trying. I doubt I'll probably be able to, but I'm trying to pinpoint when she gets pregnant because in the From Blood and Ash, Nectus tells them that Sarah was already on her way to having kids when they did what they did to Colas. So that means that in one of these books she gets pregnant. It's before she gets captured, I'm pretty sure, because she starts to have the symptoms while she's there, but that's in the next book, so we'll worry about that then. But just want to know.
I gotta think of the timeline. And then she says, she's talking about Niktos, and she says that I didn't need him to prove, um, that he already had 3 years ago when he refused to take me as his consort. I just hadn't realized it then, and gods knew it. It hadn't turned out how he had expected, but he'd wanted to give me freedom. By the way,
She's
she's
thinking about
breathing.
decent bone.
Yeah, decent bone, but she's also like doing her breathing exercises because she's
Mm-hmm.
like having a panic attack because mood. And he'd proven it over and over again since then when he prevented me from getting myself killed in the Lux and didn't touch a single hair on my head when I stabbed him in the heart. He'd stopped Tavius when no one else would or could. He'd saved my life again by giving me a rare antidote to a deadly toxin, and he did so before he even knew about the embers. He'd taken my mother down by several notches and then some. And then there was what Rain had claimed after the Cimmerian came to the gates of the Rise, the unknown sacrifice Niktos denied. Niktos knew me, heard me, and he made sure I understood that a part of me was good, that he didn't see me as a ghost or a monster. He saw me, period. Honestly, he saw her
Yeah.
as someone strong and brave with or without the embers. And I know he'd been telling the truth when he claimed to be angrier about what he believed to be my lack of regard for my life, that he cared despite his resolve not to see me as anything more than a consort and title only, despite his real inability to love. And she wanted more. She wanted to be his wife, his partner, his queen. Shocker. We all knew that she wanted him.
Weird.
Um, and um Jadis falls asleep and she was like falling from Sarah, and Nectus appears. And he's like, she
No,
doesn't
she
want to
had
let
fallen
go.
asleep. Yeah.
Well, they're all fallen
They
asleep,
all
and
they're all asleep.
and Jadis was like falling from Sarah's arms. And Reaver's like, I've never seen her sleep this long ever. Which is shocking, I guess, for a Draken. And then she's like, oh shit. She goes back to her thoughts about the wanting of something I could have was foreign to her, but because just like Niktos had spent a life of just existing and wanting felt like living. Had spent a life of just existing and wanting felt like living. Oh, that's so tragic. Sorry, I just reread that because I was like, wait. Oh. Anyway. And then Sarah's like, this is all your fault. And Nexus is like, what is? And she's like, everything, except the current situation with Jadis and my hair. And Nexus is like, it's been a long time since someone blamed me for nearly everything while I had no idea what I'd done. Strangely, I think I missed that. And I just love them. I love him, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And then she notices a shift in Nectus's eye color, and then Nectus like stopped smiling, his features sharpened, and he was like, "What color do they turn?" And she goes, "Blue, really bright, intense blue. Is that normal?" And Nectus goes, "Sometimes." And then he goes, "Thank you for watching the younglings," and he's like, leaves. And Nyctos is leaning against the bare wall, arms crossed over the great tunic he must have changed into. Nectus stopped by Nyctos, speaking too low for her to hear. Whatever Nectus said to him caused Nyctos to push off the wall. His arms unfolded as he glanced to me. Then they're talking about her hair, which is not, important. Um, and um, he says that you've been sleeping a lot more lately. And she's like, I know, I feel fine, no headaches or anything, but I didn't sleep this much before. I guess it's the culling. And Nyctos nods and says it could have been the training this morning. And she goes, I don't want to stop because she's so afraid that he's going to take something away from her just because of like the culling. Um, and he's like, I'm not suggesting we do. And she's like, I feel like there's a but coming. And Nyctos goes, "You saw Nectus's eyes change color," and she was like, "To blue. Is there something wrong with them?" And he goes, "No, I've never seen them that color, but all of the Draken used to have blue eyes." And she goes, "Really? What are they now? Or why are they now red?" And Nyktos goes, "They turned that way after Colas took the embers of life from my father. It's a sort of notum, a primal bond between the Draken and the true primal of life. It was severed when the embers were taken, and their eye color had stayed that way since there had been no true primal of life, no true primal of life who ascended." And then she goes, "Then why did they momentarily change because of me? Because I haven't ascended, obviously." And Nyktos goes, "The embers could be growing stronger in you, and that innate primal bond between the Draken and the true primal of life was temporarily responding to them." And he goes, "Normally the increase in strength of primal embers isn't a big deal." So then she's like, "Okay, so what is the big deal?" And Nyktos is like, "It could mean that you're closer to ascension than we realized." And I'm like, sir, what do you mean? What do you mean? So then we go into chapter 26. Oh boy. We go into chapter 26 and she's like, it's at some point yesterday, Sarah decides that Nyktos doesn't need to know that she cares for him. I don't understand why, but she's all like, "It didn't seem fair to put
Women.
that on him, even though I knew he cared for me too, and even though I thought what I felt might be more." Um, Nyktos continued to honor both deals that he struck with her, joining her for supper, and then later proving that he was exceptionally fast learner when it came to using his tongue. Anyway. Um, and
Hmm.
and so then they're traveling to the Vale, and because he kisses her, and he goes, "You are projecting desire," and he was like, "If you keep thinking that way, we'll never make it to the Vale." And Sarah's like, "That wouldn't be responsible of us." And he was like, "Absolutely not, so behave." And she's like, "You're the one manhandling and kissing me." And he's like, "I'd say you're driving me to do so, but I've been looking for a reason to kiss you since you licked that drop of juice from your lip at breakfast." And she was like, "You don't need a reason, you just need a want." And he's like, "I'll keep that in mind."
Aw.
And they touch foreheads. It's so adorable.
Oh,
Um, and um, it's so funny. Um, so then they're talking about her mother, and because he gives her a horse
mm.
to ride. And he was like, "Did your mother believe that the promised consort of a primal didn't deserve her own horse?" And she's just like, "I don't think my mother believed anything was really necessary for me." And Sam puts a great note that says, "Receiving gifts is probably going to end up being Sarah's love language after this." I mean, tracks.
With the amount of gifts she's getting and the kind of gifts they are, I'd be mine. It is mine, but still.
Um, and then they were talking about how like Ector and Lathan essentially watched her, and she was like, "How much did Lathan and Ector see of her travels in the moral realm?" And he was like, "Enough."
Ooh.
And like that sounds, you know, sussy.
Maybe they saw her go into
Those places and those things doing that thing and
their version of brothels.
correct. Um, and so then they're traveling down a quiet road, and it's ominous to Samantha because that's not surprising, and then they're being stalked by a Draken, and like honestly, that tracks. What the heck is his name? Um,
That was Ethon. That was.
is that our buddy Ethon?
Yep, Ethon. He must have
Okay.
been near and saw us leave. He's just keeping an eye on us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We love an Ethon. And then they're
Trusty.
having a conversation, and he said, "The day you asked me if I'd accepted this way of life, I haven't. From the moment I ascended, I've searched for a way to destroy Colas, to weaken him enough that he could be entombed. As you already know, I couldn't find anything." Um, and then she's like, "Is that why you have an army?" And he was like, "That's why I began to build one. Are you at all familiar with war?" And she kind of gives a background of Lysania being on the verge of war, but like we never went to war during her lifetime. And Nyctos goes, Colas believes all mortals should be in service to the primals and gods, that their lives should be dedicated to appeasing the whims of those more evolved than they are, that those who do not worship the primals with dedication and respect should be punished. He has already ordered the primals and gods to punish mortals more harshly, even for the simplest indiscretions. You may not have seen this play out in your kingdom yet, or were simply unaware, but failure to even bow before a statue of a primal could result in death in other places. Which is a little extra, Colas. I'm just
Mhm.
saying. Um, and um, Sarah goes, what Penelope saw in her vision, she made it seem like Colas had gone to sleep. And Nyctos is like, or was entombed. And uh, Sarah goes, but it also sounded like he woke up again. I mean, is
Did
that a
he?
foreshadow? Is that a foreshadow if
It's
I've
like
ever
they're
seen one?
talking about the ending of From Blood and Ash. Weird.
And so Nyctos goes, prophecies are only possibilities. Parts of them may or
Mm.
may not come to pass. They too are no guarantee.
Mm.
Um, and so this is whatever. Anyway, Nick just wanted to show her something, and um, she sees poppies. The poisonous
Poppies.
temperamental poppies that remind you of me. Which really, in hindsight, like this is also a great little like a little not a foreshadowing, but like a little tribute to our girl. Those poppies are the hope of life. The power of those embers, proof that life cannot be defeated, not even in death. Um, then they uh then they start talking about the pits of endless flames where souls that had committed the most atrocious crimes were sentenced, some for eternity, which is where Tavius was. And she smiles at this, even though she probably should have felt disturbed, but like she didn't.
No.
Shocker.
No.
Um, and then they start to see the mist. I think they're going through the pillars. Yeah, they're nearing the pillars. And so there was a mist thick and heavy obscuring the land and the sky, leaving only the road visible. Sarah looked down, seeing tendrils of it seeping onto the road, but I knew this wasn't normal. It was the essence of the primals, and the longer I stared into it, the more I could make out darker clumps within. Darker clumps within, yeah, forms. There were shapes inside it, bodies drifting slowly.
Ooh.
And essentially they're the souls of recently deceased waiting to enter the pillars, and the embers of light are of life are responding to the souls. He found it his dad found it difficult to be near the pillars because
Mhm.
it would wear on him,
Which
which is
makes sense if
tragic.
you're the primal of life and
Yeah,
you want to give life. You know they're supposed to be balanced, but then you're around all that death.
that's really
It's
overwhelming.
hard, yeah.
And then like can't see or hear them. Um, and like it's a brief time until they pass through the pillars and they will not remember anything anyway. Um, and so Niktos is telling um Sarah that she's stronger than she realizes, and she goes, "The embers, you mean?" And Niktos goes, "He doesn't misspeak." Oh, who said that? He speaks of you, not the embers. Who the heck? Oh, Draken. I was like, who the hell told her that? Um, Also calling her Mia Liesa. I think this is really important that like people she doesn't really interact with, but like clearly respect her or respect her title, um,
It
are
was Nictus who
acknowledging.
called her that.
Where did this come from? Oh, haha, I
He
see
came
it.
in after the break.
Yeah, I see that. Sorry. Listen, I get too distracted by the Niktos Sarah banter. Anyway,
Oh,
he speaks of you, not the embers, and I love Nectus being a little protective of Sarah because we also see it in the new books. Like he calls
yeah,
her the consort, but like, you know.
yeah.
Um,
And even Reaver, he calls her the consort, but anytime he speaks of her, he's not harsh. He's a lot softer
oh,
and a lot sweeter.
it's so cute. Um, and then they're going, two deep black columns rose from the mist, positioned several yards apart, and they stretched so high into the now violet lace iron sky, I couldn't see where they ended or even if they did. And,
Which is
they
very similar to the pillars when you enter Atlantia, where who is it that Theon and Layla, are they the twins that they rest underneath those pillars?
something like that. That sounds right to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many
These
gods
people
and
look
goddesses.
These people like their pillars that just you can't see as they go into the sky.
Pretty much. So three waited on horseback, all three cloaked and hooded, wearing white. Each horse was shrouded in the same pale color. Their cloaks and shrouds rippled gently around them, but there was no breeze, and the horses weren't exactly normal either. Um, and Sarah asks, "What are they?" They're Polmus, Penia, Penia, no, I don't know, and Loimus. Bless me. They're the embodiment of the actual name of who they are than actual names. It's primal language, and they are called writers of the end. Their names mean war, pestilence, and hunger, and when they ride, they bring about the end to wherever they travel because death always follows them. That's very dark and creepy. And the riders
Rude.
bowed, which Nectus says, "Huh, haven't seen that happen in a while," which tracks. Um, and then Nyctos is like, "She's very important to me, Nectus, so please be careful." And then right before they leave, Sarah goes, "I want to be your consort, Nyctos." And
Don't you remember at the beginning of this chapter, she's like, he doesn't need to be burdened by my feelings, and now here she is like, I want you.
And then he moved, lifting his hand to her cheek, and he goes, "Breathe," and she takes a breath, and his thumb drew that line over her chin just below her lip. Because the way he stared at me, the wisps of ether beginning to spread out from behind his pupils, it felt like more, which I knew was impossible. Yet he lifted the hand he held to his mouth and pressed a kiss against my knuckles, and slowly he turned it over and pressed another kiss to my palms. He never took those now heated quicksilver eyes off of me. "I'll be waiting for you, Liesa."
Waiting indeed. Sorry, I know where my second chapter ends and I'm not happy.
That's okay.
Anyways, so Nectus and Sarah continue their travels because Nyctos can't go any farther because only a Draken and Immortal can enter where they are going. No primals can. They're traveling, looking at the beautiful landscape. The sky was painted in shades of vivid blue and soft white, but there was no sun. Um, let's see, the green hills full of trees with purple and pink blossoms. The landscape looked like a painting. No people, no homes, no other signs of life. And she realizes that the road is sparkling, and she says, "Are those diamonds?" And he said, "Crushed diamonds. The veil was formed by the joyous tears of the most ancient primals and gods. You'll find them just about everywhere here." And I think it's interesting because there's so many times they mention stuff, and I'm like, how close? I tried to piece together this Elysium with the Elysium they saw when they first went there with Poppy and Castile and stuff.
Nah, I
And I'm
can't.
just like, where were they? Because they saw the crushed diamonds, they saw the statues with the wings. Like, I'm just like, where did they enter? Where did this cavern enter them at? And it hurts my brain to try to figure that out. But she looks over at Nyctos and he's grinning at her, and he hasn't stopped since they left. Nectus hasn't stopped grinning since they left Nyctos at the crossroads, and he's still grinning. And she says, "Shut up!" And he said, "I didn't say anything." And she says, "You
But
didn't
you
need
did.
to." I
But
know.
you did, Nick. You did.
And he says, "I didn't know you could read thoughts." And then he asks her if it's true what she said, and she's like, "I did. I meant it." And he's like, "You care for her?" And it's like, "No, duh, of course." Um, I just love this. Um, and she says, "I do," and it says that grin remained as he arched a brow. I know. Well, glad that's established. And she says, "I knew it before you." He says, "I knew it before you were ready to admit it." And she says, "Congratulations." And he goes on to explain, saying that's why he sent her to feed when he needed feeding. Um, it wasn't because you felt like you had to, but because you needed to. And she's like, "Did you smell that on me too?" And
Oh,
she said,
Nectus.
"Yeah, I know." And he said no, he knew it when she couldn't answer if he would have she still would have done it to save her people once she knew who he was. And she says, "Part of me says yes because I would do anything to save Lysania, anything, but the other part says no. But if I had, there would have been no need to kill me. I think that would have done the job for you." Um, And he says, if that's the case, then I'm more right than I even realized.
Nictus,
Freaking
you're
love
always
him.
right. You're
Right?
always right.
Uh, and we love Nectus.
Hmm.
And he's saying that Nectus is telling her that Nyctos cares about her too. And he's given her that reassurance of like, it's not one sided. And she's like, I know that. And he's like, do you know what he did? Talking about the cardia. And she says, yes, I know why he did that. But then, Nectus then says, Ash doesn't fear becoming his father. He fears becoming his uncle. And
Drax.
it's like, what? She's like, he can never be like him. And he's like, I don't think so either. But even I never expected Colas to go to so extremes. And he's talking about what happened between Ethos and Colas. He says life and death are not very different. Both are natural and necessary cycle. There cannot be life without death. But where Ethos was celebrated and welcomed, Colas was feared and dreaded. That would foster jealousy in the best of us, and he was jealous of his brother, still is even now. But it wasn't until Colas experienced love and loss that he changed, that he began to become what he is today. Love can breathe life and inspiration into one, and loss of it can rot and taint the mind of another. That is what Ash fear most. Loving someone, losing them, then becoming something even worse than Colas. Honestly though, like that's that's a true fear to have. Um like he's like if anyone should fear that it would be Nyctos because he's seen what that loss can
Yep.
do.
Firsthand.
Yeah. And he says because we're talking about the kind of caring that allows you to put yourself in harm's way for the one you care for, that doesn't stop you from feeling, even if you believe that those emotions won't be returned, even if you know the risks, yet you can still find peace. And she says he cannot love me. He says I'm not talking about him. And she's like, I don't love him. But the words ring a little hollow. I don't even know what that feels like. And Nectar says, then how do you know? He's just
Nictus, you're a
like,
pretty pretty astute man.
he's the
Draken.
wise man we all need. I wish I had a Nectus to talk to in my life. I'd probably want to punch him in the face, but it'd be nice to have that wisdom in my life,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
especially since I deal with your ass all the time.
Same here, honey. Same here.
uh, And she's like, I can't think about this. And he's like, why? Because you fear you love him and he can't feel the same. And she's like, it's not even that. I don't want to think about this because it terrifies me. And he says, as it should. And she says, that's reassuring. But she said, I didn't even want to think about the idea of love. It was easier to acknowledge that I cared for Nyctos, cared deeply, but that wasn't love. And this was a conversation I didn't want to continue. Um,
Mood.
and then she kind of changes the subject, asking if the entirety of the veil looks like this. And he says a common resemblance. It's changing to accommodate a soul's ideal paradise, becoming whatever they desire. All aspects of a soul's needs and wants are met in the veil. Even what they see, Arcadia is much the same. Look to your right and up toward the sky. What do you see? And she sees the mist, and he says it's the shroud. It's primal mist and hides the veil from those who do not enter through more traditional means, like dying. So they continue to travel. And she starts to think about like when she enters the veil, would she find eternal peace in Arcadia if his plan did succeed? Did the primal embers truly make up for the not so mortal morality? Or would it simply come down to Nyctos intervening upon death and ensuring I found peace instead of punishment, which we know he would do for her? And then she's realizing that these are morbid thoughts and she's trying not to think about that. And then she starts to hear some singing. It says, a soft hum drew me from my thoughts, my brow pinching. I looked to my right. The sound wasn't a hum, it was a voice. Voices singing. My grip on Gala's reins loosened and then firmed as I strained to hear the words. They were in a different language, one that felt ancient, and the embers buzzed in response to it. But the sound, the voices, and the melody, they were a prayer, a celebration, haunting as the voices rose and fell. beckoning. Tears filled my eyes. It was the most beautiful sound I ever heard. And then Necta says, stop. And she realizes that he tells her, you're getting too close. You can't go there. And she realizes that while she was in this trance, she started moving towards where the singing was. And she's like, I didn't mean to do that. And he's like, I know you hear the songs. And she nodded and he said, it's the sirens singing. Whenever they sense something that shouldn't be this close, they sing to lure the trespasser into the shroud. Not even
Mm-hmm.
you with primal embers would survive that. And so
Mm.
Nectus's hands stayed on the reins as they continued forward.
And don't blame him. What a protective Draken.
Right? Um and hours later the sirens finally stopped singing. Can you imagine having to like go through that for hours trying not to react to those siren
I would
sounds?
bring my headphones, but that's just me.
I don't think they had that as an option here, honey.
Well,
I
if
mean,
I'm in there, then that's an option.
oh, okay. She's gonna make some headphones. She's really just shoving rocks into her ears.
That sounds painful.
She says, not even snacking on the jerky Nectus had brought me had helped, and food was normally the ultimate distraction, which is a mood. And they find an opening, I believe. They find these. My words. My words are not wording. The vertical cliffs made of pure shadow stone and something else, something that glittered crimson under the sun, reminding me of Nectus's hair. And she's like, I hope we don't have to climb that thing. But then he tells her that the pools of Divanish, um, are beneath. And he's like, you claustrophobic? And she says, I don't think so. And he says, but guess we're about to find out, aren't we? Good thing it's not me because I am claustrophobic. And she realizes as they're going in there that they can't see. And she's like, can you see? He says, I can. She says, Draken must have really good eyesight. And he says, we have amazing senses. Um, and she
Our girls
asks
really
him,
just want elevated things. It's so
they just,
funny.
I know, they're like, this is not fair. We have all this power, yet you have the cool senses, which honestly, mood. Um, it would be annoying to have all that power, and then people are like, oh, I hear someone coming, and you're like, I hear nothing. What are you talking about? Um, and there's also something about our girls smelling like death. Um, because she says, you said you smelled death on me before. He says, I did. I still do. I smell ash on you, but I also smell death. Your body, it's dying. And she's like, what the fuck? And he says, you're actively dying, Sarah. The coaling is killing you. You know that. And she's like, yeah, but having you say it while we're under a mountain and I can't see shit puts it a whole different perspective. I was like,
Honestly, though.
yeah, honestly though. And she asks if she smells bad. And he said, death does not smell bad. It carries the same scent as life, but weaker. Lilacs. And she said she'd smelled that before, stale lilacs. Um, and she started to wonder if Nyctos could smell that, and she stopped herself. Um, and he's like, he's like telling her to stay here, and she's like, I'm not going to run off. And he's like, I don't know that with you. Sometimes we turn your back for a few seconds, and you run off. And she's like, I do not.
Yes, she
Um,
does.
yes, she does. And they come into this cavern. Um, the air was significantly warmer here and humid, much sweeter. I took a step forward and immediately saw why. Thick branches, smothered with lilacs, snaked along the floor, climbed the walls of the tavern, and spread across the ceiling and the opening above. That's a whole lot of lilacs. Is this what death smells? Is this why death smells like lilacs? He says, I don't know why death smells like that, but lilacs are special. They represent renewal, and both of life and death are that, a renewal. If you ever see lilacs like this near water in the mortal realm, you can be assured that you're near a gateway to Elysium, to Dalos in particular. Which makes
Hmm.
me think of Poppy and Castile's cavern, because aren't there lilacs in there?
Hmm.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. But she sidesteps Nectus and she saw a rocky outcrop that rose to about the height of her waist. formed in a jagged circle that was roughly the size of Nectis in his Draken form. The water of the pools of Divanash were still and clear as they approached him. Honestly, there's part of me that thought that this area was their cavern. Like, I don't know why. I don't know if it is, but my brain went to did Poppy and Castile have sex in the pools of Divanash? That's where my brain went to.
It doesn't surprise me.
It'd be so funny if they did.
I mean, it very much might be the case in this scenario. Years
Right.
later, who knows?
Yeah. But then they're talking about how she needs to do a drop of blood, and then also you have to give something not known to others. She'd forgotten about that part. He says once you do, they should let you, it should be okay for you to proceed. Hopefully. And he's like, I've never seen it work, so we're gonna find out. And she said, so basically I have to admit a secret or something. He says that's the gist of it. It's an exchange of sorts, an answer for a truth, one not known to others, likely not even to oneself. And she wasn't sure what that meant, and then she said, I started to ask what the hell that meant, but I thought I understood what kind of truth it was looking for, one that made you uncomfortable to admit. And she's like, there's a lot of uncomfortable truths, and there wasn't enough time for her to list them all, but there's one in particular that came to mind. So she put the drop of blood in the water, and she said, the day I took too much sleeping draft wasn't an accident or a spur of the moment decision. I didn't want to wake up. The air, so as she speaks that, a hiss hit the air of the cavern. The water burst to life. It was bubbling. Steam was coming out, and Necta says, I think that means it accepted your answer, Mieliesa. And she says she didn't want to look at him, didn't want to, she wanted to pretend that he didn't hear what she just said. And so she just says, show me Delphi, a god of divination, please.
I love the
And
please.
the please. She's like, maybe if I say please, it'll really work. And it starts showing them an image of like the sky and everything. And she's like, I hope that's not it. And he's like, I don't think so. And it changes color and everything. And the bodies and shapes are coming to form. It was a man. He looked about to be the same age of Holland, round shaped face, like describing Delphi. And we're like, that's him. Looking quite alive and well. And then he's speaking to someone, and it's a woman. And as it comes more into focus, she says, I know her. That's Kaylee Balfour, the Princess of Ireland. Delphi is in Ireland at Caldra Manor.
And with
I like her
that,
last name.
that's a very interesting last name, but also that's a great place to stop this part. We did it. And part 4 will be out literally the day after you listen to this, so you really could probably just keep listening. Just listen on right through.
Shit's about to go down.
No, honestly. But Sippin N Bitchin everywhere on the socials. And if you're feeling saucy, you can join our Patreon, because there's some saucy stuff in there too. Wink wink, cough cough. And we'll catch you next time, bitch.
Bye.